Welcome to Mpowered Living. I'm Sheu. On this podcast, innovative leaders and visionary experts share insights and practical tools for work, family, and marriage. Each episode, we'll explore how to elevate your life while staying grounded in what truly matters to you. You're working hard to navigate relationships, build a thriving family, and create a legacy of purpose. We're here to help you do that with confidence and intentionality. So if you're ready to live a life by design, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Mpowered Living. I'm your host, Sheu, and today's conversation is one I'm excited to share with you guys. My guest is Mark C. Winters, visionary coach, best-selling author of Rocket Fuel, and now the author of Visionary, a book that changed the way I see myself. Mark has spent decades working with the most driven entrepreneurs out there, the ones who are often told they're too much, when in fact, they're simply wired to lead a different way. In this conversation, we talk about what it means to be a visionary, the strengths, the chaos, the self-doubt, and the freedom that comes from owning how you're built. Mark breaks down the patterns he sees across thousands of visionary leaders, why so many get trapped doing things they simply hate doing because they're good at them, and how to shift your energy back into your true zone of genius. We also get personal about how this work shows up in marriage, in parenting, in decision-making. And we unpack Mark's newest framework, the Exponential Freedom Framework, which maps out how to build a life you actually want, not just a business that looks successful on paper. It's validating, it's energizing, and if you've ever felt like you had to tone yourself down to fit in, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Mark, it is such a pleasure to have you here today. I cannot wait for this conversation.
I've been looking forward to it, Ann. Always love talking to you.
Same. Well, let me tell you guys, I got a special sneak peek of Mark's newest book, and it's out already, Visionary, and it freaking changed my life. It helped me unlock so much and really helped me have so much clarity. And I'm curious, Mark, what have you been hearing about the book from people that have been picking it up and reading it?
Well, I loved your message. So, when I heard that from you, that was like, okay, that's super cool. That made my week. But it's a lot of the similar thing, right? So it's a lot of sort of self-discovery in terms of, oh, okay, now that gives me a way to think about that, a language to put to it, a clarity around a question that they had either been wrestling with or hadn't thought to wrestle with. Fortunately, so far, everything's sounding really good.
Yeah. Okay, so you start the book by sharing a story about someone who is essentially unemployable, not because of poor performance, but because of how hard and how fast they're pushing. I have been told many times that I am unrealistic, right? And that it's irrational or too much. And I always thought that was something that I needed to turn down. It was something that I needed to fix. And it didn't really occur to me how it's not just me and that it's actually part of my strengths. And so tell me about the patterns that you see in the visionaries that you work with that help them discover this and help them understand this. And then what type of environment do they need to be in? Like, what do they need to do to set themselves up for success, knowing that for most visionaries, we are too hard, too extreme, too fast, too much?
Yeah, so that's a huge question, Ann. So that's a really, really big question that it kind of requires the whole thing to respond to. So maybe we can chunk that down a little bit. But to start, I really think you have to think about visionary entrepreneurs as like a force of nature. I think that's a fair way to describe them. And I specifically talk about what I call driven and visionary entrepreneurs. So it's not just the fact that they see the future and they think on these far horizons with a lot of creativity, but it's this inner drive, that this fire, this push, this tempo for how they attack things that I think is really special and really unique. And that combination creates this puzzle to try to solve in terms of how do you first get clear on what it is that you really do want, and then how you're going to go get it, because that nature doesn't always play well with others. And it's not always true that you can go get this thing you want all by yourself, operating in isolation. In fact, that's almost never the case. So you're going to be playing and working with others. So you need to think about and begin to understand what what that looks like, and how to do that in a healthy fashion, in a fashion that harnesses your greatness, recognizes the challenges, the that goes along with the superpowers, if you will, and allows you to kind of feather those in with the rest of the team in a way that helps the whole thing work and be powerful and impactful and actually get you to this place that you want to go.
Yeah. So those superpowers, I'm curious what you have seen as far as the superpowers that are most often undervalued by either the visionary or by the team.
Mm,
The ones where if we were to lean into this, there would be so much value add to the business and to the team. But as visionaries, we tend to discredit it or stuff it down the most.
that's a great question, and I think the short answer is most of the natural visionary behaviors are undervalued
Mm,
by maybe more by the visionary than anybody, because you think because it's natural for you, it seems easy. This doesn't work. Are you kidding me? That can't be all I do. That can't be, isn't this easy for everybody? And it's the classic puzzle where it feels so easy to you that you just don't think it's hard for anyone else. And the reality is it's hard, if not impossible, for most other people. And they look at you and they're like, wow, how did you come up with that? How do you do that? How do you do this thing that you do? So, the short list is, I describe it as seeing the future, where are things headed, where could we position our firm along that path to take full advantage of the things that are coming? Tons of creativity. So, lots of new ideas, never a shortage of new ideas. Admittedly, a number of them may be dangerous for our business and could cause a problem, right? But in that stack are some things that are just pure gold, and they're the things that could really take us to the next level or take us to the moon. Big outside relationships in the industry and the community with strategic partners and vendors and all that kind of stuff. Great at meeting new people and starting new relationships and really being valued and appreciated in those. A lot of times, kind of we'll think about R&D, kind of coming up with new stuff and really the big interesting problems, not just all the little pesky problems that show up every day, every week, but kind of the big, interesting, strategic ones. Those are fun for a visionary to kind of think about. And a lot of times they'll see something that others can't see. So that's the space that we want the visionaries to spend their time and energy in for the most part. And when they do, tremendous amount of leverage there. And obviously it's easy. You enjoy it. It's fun. So the energy is different than when you get bogged down in all the little pesky things that you can do it because you kind of had to figure out how to do it. But
mhm.
golly, if you spend 2 hours on that in a day, you're kind of zapped and you don't have a lot of juice to spend maybe on anything else. So that would be a waste. So that's how I see it play out.
Yeah. So what's interesting is for me personally, I was raised, and I use the term raised by like not just by my parents, but by society to believe that if I want to achieve and succeed, that I need to be able to execute flawlessly myself. Right. And so there's a lot of head trash that comes with fully leaning into this idea of being a visionary and really letting go and admitting that I am not the best person to execute on a lot of these ideas. Do you think that that is pretty common for people who are discovering this visionary concept? Or do you feel like most visionaries tend to just be more of the traditional break the mold rule breaker, right? Because I think part of why I had such a hard time wrapping my head around the visionary concept until I read your book was because I told myself, like, I don't fit that mold of this crazy visionary that's moving 1,000 miles an hour, but is not afraid to break rules. Like I tend to like rules. Like there's a part of me that likes structure. I have high attention to detail. I like excellence, right? And so I told myself, I'm not actually a visionary.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of factors at play. And, and you and I have talked a little bit about, your specific experience. And so you get a lot of outside influences around you that are telling you things. And, you just got to kind of figure that out. Now, what I see is people who are wired to be a visionary naturally, a lot of times they don't start out in a situation where they maybe can afford to get help. They sort of have to do it all themselves. They have to be execution focused because that's a survival thing. They just don't have another choice or they don't see another choice yet. right? And so as a result, they end up getting decent at some of this stuff, maybe really good at it, but it doesn't feel the same for them. So you don't get the same juice out of it as they do out of some of their more natural visionary types of things. But they still they're pretty good at it. So they sort of eventually kind of fool themselves into this place of, well, I can do all of that. And they never stop to think about and answer the questions. Okay, but if I didn't have to, would I? Would I choose to work on that stuff? Would I choose to spend my time there, or where would I choose to spend my time? So that's kind of the question we're trying to get to. And in EOS, we've always talked about our target market being businesses between 10 and 250 employees. So at 10 employees, you've kind of passed that initial startup phase and kind of figured all that. Now you've got people around you. You're beginning to maybe form what we call a leadership team. So it's kind of starting to change that dynamic a little bit. And maybe you're thinking about an integrator and what that looks like. So that's when really it starts to change. That's probably who I'm speaking to with this book more than anybody,
Mhm.
is the visionary that's at or approaching that transition point and beginning to get their head around that curve.
Okay, so for the listeners who aren't familiar with the term integrator, can you just take a minute to explain what that means? And then how does the visionary who might be listening know that they're at this transition point?
Sure. So the integrator, so in Rocket Fuel, which was, the original book that Gino Wickman and I wrote together, and we talk about both of these roles, the visionary and the integrator. So think of the visionary as the idea generator, the idea engine, the future oriented, big external relationships, big interesting problems like we talked about. And then coupled with that, this integrator role is really the execution engine. So they're the ones that can actually follow through and make this stuff happen. The visionary makes it up, the integrator makes it happen, and they make it happen by having a much higher detail orientation. They are great at holding people accountable. They can work harmoniously through and between the other members of the leadership team to keep everybody pointed in the same direction, pulling together, following through on all the little details that have to happen. So that's the nature of that role. And if you think about it, very naturally they're wired so differently that there's a lot of friction that will show up in that relationship. So in Rocket Fuel, we introduced what we called the 5 rules, which are really the structure for how to take that relationship from sort of this combative, frustrating thing and blend it together in a way that the power is positive, and it allows you to really create the kind of power that can push your business to that next level. So that's how those two work together. That's what the integrator role is.
And how do you know if somebody's listening and they're maybe thinking, "Oh, I might be a visionary." How do I know when it's time to go find that integrator?
Yeah, so another good question, and it really depends. So first, I would point them to a resource. If you go to rocketfueluniversity.com, there's some assessments called the Crystallizer Assessment, where you can see what your natural wiring is, whether it's more visionary or integrator, and actually get a score. Word of encouragement there: please be super honest. So don't kid yourself. Don't fill that out with just kind of, oh, here's what I want it to say, but really be honest with yourself and think deeply about the questions and answer them as truthfully as you possibly can. If you'll do that, it'll give you some indication so that you're not kind of fighting your own nature. Because trust me, if you try to fake it out, time will tell. I mean, your true self is going to show up, right? So,
I did, by the way.
okay.
I think I tried to unintentionally game the system to prove that I could execute,
Yeah, it's sort of
right?
you're trying to self-validate and you
Yeah.
know what the right answer is supposed to be.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I see that interesting to
Just
hear you say
embarrassing
that.
to say.
Yeah. Well, hey, but it just the truth will, like in your own case, right? In your own experience, eventually now the truth is revealing itself even more. So that's going to happen. So if you're not honest, the way I like to explain it to people is you're just taking time away from yourself. Right. You're just slowing down the process. So the more you can be honest about it, the faster the process can actually move. So if you get your results there and you see, okay, I am a visionary and so I want to pursue this, then there's sort of two paths that I see happen. One is, you're early in your career, you're early in your experience, you're early in your business. And like we were talking before, you just got to do a lot of stuff yourself. And so you just got to kind of climb that hill and fight the fight and do what it requires to get to a point where you can begin to branch out and form this leadership team. So that's one inflection point, is for the visionary that's at that place, that path there. It's sort of bootstrapping it through and again doing it kind of the hard way to get there. That's probably when they first begin to think about it, is when they first start thinking about, okay, I think I need a leadership team. The other path, which is very interesting to me, and maybe to some of your listeners, I hope so, is someone who's done it. So they've already been there. They've already had an integrator and it worked, and they felt what it feels like to have a positive, powerful visionary integrator relationship. And it did amazing things for their business. And then maybe they had an exit event. Maybe they sold it. Maybe they whatever. And so now they've moved on. They're on to their next deal, right? And they're getting ready to start another one. And I watch that, and I'll bet 8 times out of 10, that visionary, their first hire
Yeah.
is the integrator because they know and they just have a sense for that. And they're like, okay, I don't want to fight it. Let's solve that missing piece. And then that missing piece is going to help me solve all of the other missing pieces. So depends on
Yeah.
which ladder you're climbing.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay. So you talk in the book about leaders struggling to really articulate their why. So, in that first pillar, the know thyself pillar, I would love to spend some time there because this is so aligned with the work that we're doing at Empowered Journey, how important it is to really know yourself, your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, really know what you want out of life. For visionaries and leaders who aren't really able to articulate their why, where do you suggest that somebody starts with that work?
Yeah. So there's a framework that I developed that I included in the book that I call intrinsic genius. And basically it's the intersection of your competence. So that thing that you're really naturally gifted at that you love doing, your your passion or your joy, so what you really love, and then what I call your drive. And so that's the thing that you're passionate about, that's going to be the impact that you're going to have on the world, or whatever the target is of the impact that you want to have, right? And so it's a typical Venn diagram where those things come together. Is that something special? It's that thing that you do that you make it look easy. You could do it forever. You love it. You feel great about it. People are amazed at how easy you make it look, and it's all in the direction of, again, this thing that you care most about. So we've got an exercise to kind of walk you through a bunch of questions to help you get your head around whatever that might be for you. And yours is different from mine, is different from somebody else's, and so you've got to kind of think through that. So that's the tool. That's the approach. It's interesting, from the time that we began working with visionary entrepreneurs, what I would see happen is naturally visionaries don't spend enough time thinking about themselves. And what I mean by that is introspection. They don't spend enough time looking inside themselves, trying to understand what's really going on in there, and what that might mean for everything else. And the reality that I see is if they don't do that, all the other decisions they make are a little bit shaky.
Mm,
And in fact, they may be pointed in an entirely wrong direction
yeah.
for what's really going on in there. So it's super important that they look inside first, and it shows up. One of the early places it shows up is if they are going to have an integrator counterpart. Well, we talk about it like a two-piece puzzle that's got to fit together. And if you don't understand your edge or the shape of yourself, how are you ever going to understand the shape of this missing piece that you're looking for? So it's super important to take the time and spend the work to do that up front.
And what is it that you think is stopping visionaries from operating in that intrinsic genius? Like, it seems like such a, I don't want to say it's a simple concept, but it seems like, duh, we should all be doing this thinking and do this reflection. But why don't most people
Well, I
do
think
it?
there's a couple of reasons. One is I think they know the answer already, and so like again, like you were top of mind, thinking, okay, I need to do this. I am good at this, and just kind of rolling on. You weren't really stopping to take that apart. So that's one. And the other thing that I see happen is other influences drive us, and I include myself in this because it certainly has happened to me, to do the things that they need us to do.
Mm,
So if you think, one of the structures in the book I call the joy competence matrix. And so literally the vertical axis is joy, some things you love doing, some things you hate doing, right? And then the horizontal axis is competence. So some things you're great at, maybe an expert at, right? And on the other end, stuff you're bad at, maybe you're really a hack at that. And so you break down those quadrants, and one of the quadrants, I call it the trap, is the stuff that you're really good at that you hate doing. And visionaries find themselves drawn back into that quadrant again and again because, who wants you to work there? Everybody else wants you to work there because it's great
Mhm.
for them. You're so good at it, but it's just sucking the life out of you. It's taking all that energy. And when that energy is gone, you don't have it left to go apply to these other quadrants where you really love it. And in fact, those other quadrants energize you. It's a net multiplier when you're able to spend time up there.
So, if somebody's listening and they don't have the diagram in front of them with the different quadrants, how does somebody know that they're in the trap? What are the signs? What are like the symptoms that they could be on the lookout for?
Well, it's dread.
Mm,
So it's dread that, oh gosh, I've got to go do that again. It's the frustration that you can never seem to stop this never ending parade of people that ask you to do it. It's the feeling that, these are the little voices in our head that tell us, oh, if you let them do it, they're going to make such a mess. It's going to take you longer to clean up their mess than it would for you to just go ahead and do it. Or it's going to take you so long to show them how that, you're better off to just go ahead and do it. And so, listen for those little voices and, it is your body's talking to you.
yeah.
And so when you're feeling that kind of frustration, that kind of dread, you're hearing those little voices and sort of making excuses not to find a different way, not to hand it off, not to delegate it to someone, then those are pretty common tells that that may be the quadrant you're hanging out in.
Yeah. What would you tell the leader that is listening who feels like the know thyself work is too soft, right? They would rather talk about the hard hitting business strategies, and this work is for the weak.
Yeah. So there's an ancient proverb that I included in the book that says if you want to build a tall tower, you got to spend a lot of time on the foundation. And so I really think that's what this is. The know thyself work is the foundation for everything. And so, okay, you can go quicker if you go do other stuff and just kind of skip it or just kind of halfway do it. But again, it's back to the truth is going to reveal itself. Your tower is going to get tippy. And at some point, and if you discover that way later, it's a lot more expensive than it is if you will take the time to discover these things up front. And frankly, it's a lot more fun if you'll
Mm,
discover it up front,
yeah.
right? And I mean, what's the point? What are you trying to do here? If you don't know why you're trying to build a business, what are you doing? It's not easy. And a lot of it is really hard. It's a beating at times, right? And so we need to have that North Star. We need to have that reason clear in our mind for why in the world we're doing this, and ultimately for a visionary entrepreneur, how does this business serve me?
Mm.
How does it serve what I want out of my life, and why I'm here on the planet and what I'm trying to do?
And I think when you're not clear about that answer, what ends up happening is you serve the business instead of the business serving you.
That's it. That's it. That's 100% true statement.
Okay, so knowing that I now identify as a visionary, what can I do to not let my chaos affect everybody on the team? And at the same time, like I want the team to move fast and make changes. How do I balance those two things?
Okay, so
Fix me, Mark.
yeah. So again, there's a lot of nuance to the answer to that question and a lot of different pieces. So it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
Although I would say that the integrator is a important part of the puzzle because they become this trusted counterpart that's strong in the areas where you are weak or where you don't want to invest the energy to be as strong as your business needs you to be, right? And so when you enter into a truly collaborative relationship with them, and actually let's talk about that a little bit because one of the things I've seen of late, I've spent a lot of time talking to visionaries about empowering their integrator, supporting their integrator, really developing a level of trust with their integrators where they can let go of the things that they should and want to let go of. And I've seen some things happen where I don't think there's bad intention, but integrators have kind of run with that maybe a bit too far.
Mm,
And I've seen situations where the integrator sort of begins to stiff arm the visionary and kind of keep them out. And that's not the point. That's not the design. When it's healthy, it's very collaborative, it's very tight knit. So the visionary and the integrator are effectively operating as a single unit. they're operating as kind of two halves of the same brain. They're investing the time and energy it requires to truly be on the same page, and they have the kind of relationship that talks about these points of conflict or points of tension and says, and I really want to be involved in this. Let's talk about how I can be more involved, or help me understand why I shouldn't. And you need to feel really good about where those lines end up being drawn, and how to raise in a healthy way any time that it doesn't feel like it's in the right zone, if you will, of the relationship. So if a visionary feels like they're getting pushed out, they should be able to ask that question and have that conversation without feeling like they're breaking some kind of rule, or doing something wrong. Again, in the context of the relationship with their integrator. And the same way for the integrator, they should be able to lean back on that visionary. Visionary, again, a force of nature, coming pretty hard and fast. And so, visionaries can blow up and burn out integrators, bunch of them before we even get past breakfast. And so the integrator's got to be able to lean back in a healthy way, a natural way, so that it feels positive, and kind of go, well, what about this? And talk about the things in order to make that whole relationship work. So the visionary's got to be open to that and willing to participate in that kind of relationship, and be able to talk about, hey, I need to tell you no sometimes. How do you want me to tell you no? In a way that's, you're not going to blow your lid and go crazy and start yelling and twist off on somebody else, or whatever, right? So we've got to be able to have all of those conversations to kind of make that work. So that's probably the first thing that I would point to as a mechanism that helps the visionary learn to stay out of the things that they should be staying out of, but still stay in all the other stuff that we need them involved in. They're engaged with that integrator. They're engaged with the leadership team. So they're at the weekly level 10s. They're talking, they're discussing the issues. They're contributing their perspective. They're, bringing their wisdom and experience that they've gained over the years about this business, wherever it's helpful, to solve what we're trying to solve, or to move something forward, or to ideate something new. So that's the healthy balance.
And I'm curious what you see as some intentional habits, some, um, other than the same page meeting, like what are things that visionaries and integrators doing that have incredibly strong relationships? What are some of the best practices outside of what we already teach?
Yeah, so let's talk about the same page meeting, because everybody may not understand that the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
So the point of the same page meeting is, like it says, and we come up with these very fancy names, right? But it's just to get the two of you on the same page, truly. And so when I first introduced that, and you may have experienced this too, but a lot of times I'll introduce that, and I'll get some kind of a response that says, "We're good. Our desks are right next to each other. We see each other every day. So we talk all the time. We must be on the same page." And in reality, when they talk, it's quick hit stuff. It's super high level, or surface level, I should say. And it never really gets very deep into the meaty things that they need to be talking about. But that's the first thing, is recognize that the same page meeting is a block of time that you're protecting, that gives both of you the time to talk about anything that is either keeping us from being on the same page, has us off the same page, or is coming down the pipe that could get us off the same page. And so we want to have enough time to talk through all of that, and ultimately come to whatever solution that we come to, and be able to walk out of that meeting both 100% confident that now we are completely on the same page again. So the prescription is, we want you doing that at least once a month. Well, let's say you and I just started our relationship, Ann, as visionary and integrator. Maybe we need to do it a little more often than that, because we've got lots to learn. We got lots to talk about. We can't just knock that all out in once a month. So we turn the frequency up to more frequent, until we're able to begin to feel like we truly are getting on the same page. And that's a fair move to make anytime you stop feeling you're on the same page. If you feel like the monthly cadence isn't keeping you on the same page, shorten it. Do it every 3 weeks, right, for a while, until you kind of get caught up and get back in sync. Another best practice that I see is, there's no rhyme, no real rule about kind of where you need to have this meeting. So a lot of healthy visionaries and integrators, they do fun and interesting things. They go play golf. They go ride horses. They go on a hike. They go play golf. They do dinner. whatever, smoke cigars, so whatever the setting is, doesn't matter. The most important thing is that you both really connect on a human level, meaning our check-in is not just quick hit, but it's kind of like, hey, Ann, tell me about the stuff you started to mention a little bit last time. I'm curious what's happened on that since then. How are you feeling about that, this family situation, that project you were working on, whatever it might be. That's not just the business, but again, it's us humans that are investing in one of the most important relationships in our lives. I have clients that call it their business spouse. So think about the level of energy and attention you would give to your spouse, and taking good care of that relationship. So let's treat this one with that level of energy as well. Check in deeply. Be sure that you get all the issues out on the table, and then take as long as it takes to really work through those and make sure that you are actually 100% on the same page again.
And any best practices in the first week, 30 days that you see?
Well, it's about, working through the kind of the core questions. So think about the questions on the VTO. So making sure that we're driving into alignment around core values, whatever the core focus is for the business, our 10-year target, our marketing strategy, our 3-year picture. So a lot of time spent there talking about it, really why is it this way? Where did that come from? And challenging as need be on whatever things that there might be that come up between the two of you. And then, the other thing that's super important out of the gate is, as visionary, you influence that integrator's success more than anybody else. So you must show up as their supporter. You must signal to the organization that, listen, I've chosen this person for a reason. It's important to me that they're successful. I believe they will be successful, and I intend to do whatever it takes to make it so. And letting them hear that, rather than kind of coming in sort of half in, half out, kind of skeptical. Signals like that from the visionary will really undermine and undercut that integrator's ability to sort of win over the rest of the team. So help them with that. Give them a little bit of time to kind of get started and learn the business, or learn the people, or learn whatever things that they may not be familiar with as they come into the role. And then the third thing would be to have some kind of a quick win plan. So, a first 90-day plan, a first 100-day plan that sort of lays out what things are most important for us to start with, but, picks at least a few things right out of the gate that they can sort of check off, that are going to be easy wins, early wins, that then is going to help make that flywheel spin more, spin faster, as people are going to start to build their confidence and trust in that integrator when they see those wins happen.
Thank you. I love
Yeah.
that. Great. Okay, so can we talk a little bit about pillar 6, thinking about what you think about? I'm curious what habits you see separate great visionaries from the ones that are frantic and chaotic and stressed out and just making a big mess.
Yeah. So let's talk about what sort of inspired that pillar.
Yeah.
I had a friend and business partner who lost his spouse. And so, I mean, you can imagine how traumatic that would be, and just really awful. And so, he was going into a very dark place, and a lot of pain, and a lot of unhealthy thoughts that were swirling around with that. And I watched it start to kind of change. So, his attitude began to come back around, and he began to have a much more positive outlook on things. And so one day we're in a conversation about it. I'm like, all right, what what flipped? What was the switch there? How did you turn that corner? And the way he explained it to me was, the therapist that he had been working with told him one day that he needed to simply think about what he thought about. And so when he would sort of, not intentionally, but just sort of reflexively go into these dark patterns of thinking, they would begin to spiral and self reinforce, and really take him to a place that was not healthy for him or anybody else around him. And so he just began to notice that. So really to observe what he was thinking about in a moment in time, and sort of ask himself, all right, is that helping me? Is that something I can do anything about? And sort of bring it back to thoughts. And he had sort of some preloaded things that were much more positive in nature, that he could sort of replace. Okay, I'm going to stop thinking about that right now, and I'm going to be grateful for, my daughter, or this memory, or whatever it was. And, as I'm sure you know well, when you've got that kind of an attitude at play in your brain, it's really hard, if not impossible, to hold a negative thought at the same time. And so it's that kind of pattern, that kind of structure for your thinking. And everybody doesn't have some big traumatic thing that they're trying to deal with, but we've all got something that sort of leads us down this path of, getting overly paranoid about stuff that's going on. We don't know about something, so we automatically assume the very worst crazy thing must be going on. And all of a sudden we start, calling people and pulling strings and, yanking on things and end up causing a lot more damage than help. So it's having a mechanism like that says, okay, here's something I don't know. Who's my first call? And a lot of times the right answer is your integrator, because they probably know, and there's probably a reason, and there's probably a whole plan that's in place around that whole thing. And so that simple call to get clarity quickly, it sort of shortcuts and keeps you out of this pattern, which heads off down a chaotic, destructive path. So those are a couple of examples. Am I getting to the nature of your question?
Yeah, that's great. Do you mind if we shift a little bit and shift away from the book? But I'm curious about this idea of visionary in a marriage. And if I know I'm a visionary, what should I be doing to make sure that I'm setting my marriage up for success, knowing my visionary tendency?
Okay, so I
I
don't
don't
know if
have
I.
an right? Like I can't tell Sonny to be my integrator. Like he has
Yeah.
integrator tendencies, but I can't make him be my integrator. We have to be partners.
Yeah, this may be a whole different book, and to kind of play with this structure around families. And I've thought about this because like in some of the tools we use, like the People Analyzer, where we look
Uh,
at core values and GWC and all that, right? And if somebody doesn't fit our core values, I mean, eventually they have to leave the organization, right? So if anybody never fit the core values in our family, what are we really going to do? So I'm not sure that there's a 100% translation to the application there, but I think it's very fair to think about the point of having a visionary on a team. And let's think about our family as a team. Is it's important to think about the future. It's important to come up with these big ideas. It's important to manage the external relationships that we have in the family. And so there's a certain skill set, there's a certain energy that you bring into that family team that I think is absolutely important. Now, it's important to recognize that vision does not just come from the visionary. You've probably heard that question, right? So you'll have a team and you start working on an accountability chart, and at some point they recognize, okay, there's this visionary seat. What? So Sam's going to sit in the visionary seat. Well, I'm kind of a visionary too. I'd kind of like to have a say in that. And so they aren't yet to the realization that, well, look, vision is actually developed by the team in a process. It's not developed in isolation. But we need to be sure that we have somebody sitting in the seat that's going to make sure we're thinking about that future. That's going to make sure we're pushing kind of out on the horizon and, kind of stretching things a little bit. And so in a family, I think that's true too. And so maybe it's as simple as that, as recognizing yourself as a visionary in your family, just to remind yourself to be sure when you're talking about stuff and working about stuff and you're doing your family planning, that you're pushing the things that would be consistent with that role, which is consistent with your own intrinsic genius.
And what if there are two visionary type personalities in the relationship? Do
Of
you ever
course,
see that?
of course there are. Well, again, so as we get off into the structure of a family and the visionary integrated relationship in a spouse, we're off of my direct experience and expertise other than my own family. And, that's a whole different story. But
Where's your wife on the crystallizer index?
so she is very high visionary.
Oh,
Yeah.
fascinating.
And so she's more integrator than I am,
Yeah.
but in a different makeup. So the composition is different. So we're kind of dangerous in that regard, where we both probably need a lot of help and in terms of executing and making sure that things happen. But she very much hangs on to the she's going to do it, she's going to make it happen. But I watch it happen, and it's just, she burns a lot of energy that if she'd let some of that stuff go, she wouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Um, but it's, now we get into like the five love languages or whatever, where her reason for doing it is she's showing love. It's not that she loves doing it,
Yeah.
but she loves doing for others. And so that's really what she's doing, is she's showing us that she loves us.
So, how do you believe that visionaries are born this way, or do you think that they are unleashed and unlocked?
So this question comes up a bit, and I think it's both. So I think there's some portion that has to be born, and it's got to be in there. And then I think there's some portion that eventually gets unlocked. Could be early or could be later. And sometimes I see people in the teams that I work with that it's like, okay, that one they're going to end up there. They just don't have enough experience yet. They just don't have enough experience to kind of have the perspective that's really going to be needed to fill that role for this company. And sometimes that means they're going to have to go through some seats that are going to be work. And, and maybe it's the integrator seat. It's important, I think, to call out though, that it's not like a career path. There's not a career path that says department head, integrator, visionary.
Right.
That's not how it's designed to work. It doesn't have to work that way. Somebody could be, they're going to need to be a leader or manager at some point just to kind of understand and have the experience of how business works. And then eventually, if they get enough perspective, I think is the main thing, to be able to actually use their intrinsic genius again to serve effectively in that role, and they want to, then I think that's whatever stage that comes together in a given company is fine. It can be a wide variation there in terms of how many years that takes.
I mean, I really credit EOS and your rocket fuel and the visionary integrator accountability chart framework in conjunction with the work that I did with strategic coach and understanding who not how. I really credit those two frameworks for giving me permission to lean into this visionary seat because I feel like I would have been trapped my entire life had I not known about this idea.
Yeah, I love Dan's work on Who Not How. I mean, that's just a great, super simple, of course, way to think about it. Because we can bang our heads against that how problem for so long, and spend so much energy doing it, and then time and again, you see if we solve the who problem, it's like then they make it look easy. It's like, why did I why did I waste all that time? I could have just had them in here, right? So yeah, I love that framework as well.
So before we wrap up, we've been kind of dancing around it, but I would love for you to just kind of close out the episode painting this beautiful picture of what it looks like when a visionary is truly unleashed and living in their intrinsic genius. Like what does that look like? Like paint us that picture for us so that the listener can feel the excitement and the inspiration.
Yeah. So okay. So let me start that back in the beginning of kind of the know thyself. And part of that process, part of that journey is to get really clear on what you want in the world. Not just what you were built to do, but how you want that to manifest. What do you want that to look like, 20 years from now or 50 years from now, right? And so that question led me to create a framework that I call the exponential freedom framework. And that's another long story that has to do with my wife and I on a hike, answering the question about what we really want out of life. And I realized I wasn't clear, and I knew I wanted freedom, but freedom means something different to me than it does to you, than it did to her. And so I needed a structure for me to answer the question, what does freedom really look like for me? And I call that your unique freedom. Okay. So I built a model that is the 9 domains of freedom. So interesting story. So everybody's got their list of stuff, right? So I went and looked at all the gurus and whatever, and here's this person's 6 things, that person's 7 things, this person's 5 things or 8 things or whatever it was. I put them all on a board, and I did this clustering process where I'm like, okay, this is kind of like that. This is kind of like that. Yeah, this is just a different way to say that. And I worked it all out. And in the end, and there are 9. There are 9. And everything that I've been had thrown at me to see if it would fit fits in those nine. And interestingly, those nine sort of interact with each other. So there's interrelationships between the nine things, but it's kind of the nine questions you have to answer about your life and what you want in the future. And so if you begin by going, okay, which of these is really more important to me than the other things? So almost a force ranking process that gets you clear on that, which is very difficult because it turns out that some of these things are sort of at odds with each other. And if you want more of this, you're naturally going to have less of this, right? And so get clear on what's most important and then go into the future and begin to paint the picture of what each of those looks like for you in the future that you want and get clear on that. And, a little aside there, again, give Dan Sullivan a lot of credit. When I was early in strategic coach, he took me through an exercise called the lifetime extender. Have you done that one? Yeah.
Yes, love that.
So for your listeners, basically you begin by saying, here's your actuarial expected age of death. So, here's how old I am now. The insurance companies think I'm going to die this year, whatever that is, and put the year on it and your age. And then you list all the things that you want to be true at your time of death and the things you want to have accomplished and whatever. So, okay, so you soak that in for a little bit and you feel good about having done all of those things. And then magically, you're given some bonus years. Here's 10 more years, 20 more years, whatever the number is. And then the hard question is, okay, great. You've already checked off all of what you thought was the important stuff. Now you've got 20 more years, Ann. How are you going to spend that? What are you going to use that for? What do you want to be true in that period of time? And for me, this was a real epiphany because I had small children at the time. And I was, going through the learning curve we all go through about being a parent. And I was pretty tough. My parents were pretty tough on me. I was pretty tough on my kids. And going through that exercise with Dan, the big discovery for me, the big aha was that at that final stage of life, I wanted it to be true that my children wanted to be around me, not out of obligation, but out of desire. They wanted to spend time with me. They wanted to come around. They wanted to hang out. They wanted to bring their kids or grandkids or ever how many generations that might be, because it was fun for them. It was enjoyable. It was a positive experience. So bring that back to the present day where I'm sitting there trying to figure out what to do with my 2-year-old or 3-year-old that just destroyed something or whatever had just happened. And it began to impact how I reacted to a situation. And yeah, I'm drawing boundaries. Yeah, I'm trying to teach them about discipline, but I have a guide there that's going, maybe you don't go that hard because that's not consistent with this future that you want. Right. So it began to change my behavior in the present. So apply that to all of these 9 domains. So what do you want that future to look like? Bring that line all the way back to the present and go, okay, if I want that in my future, what's the behavior I need to start doing now? What are the habits I need to incorporate in my routine now that's going to give me the best possibility to have that future? So bringing that all the way back around to your question, the visionary freedom that I want for you is to be able to structure your business and the relationships that you have in your business in such a way that you can get clear on that future that you want and begin to allocate your time and energy in the optimal way that's going to give you the very best chance to make it happen.
Mark, it has been such a pleasure having you with us today. I am so grateful, not just for you joining today, but for all of the work that you've done, putting all this work out into the world and changing my life, changing so many other lives. I can't even begin to say how much it means to me. So thank you for everything. We are going to link the book so that the listeners can go out and get a copy of the book.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah.
So I can show you. So literally, I haven't put this on screen anywhere yet. So this will be posted
Okay, yeah.
after the launch day, but this is like the very first one that I ever opened up.
It's so beautiful. I love it. I love it. I cannot wait for that to get into everybody's hands. I think it should be mandatory reading for anyone leading a business, starting a business.
Appreciate that, Ann. It's always enjoy talking to you. You're such a great person and such a great visionary, and you're making such a great impact on the world through your work. So I absolutely appreciate that.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Ann.
Thanks for tuning in to Empowered Living. I hope today's conversation sparked some inspiration and gave you tools to live more intentionally in your family, work, and life. If you enjoyed our episode today, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story or actionable takeaway. And if you know someone who would love this episode, share it with them. Because living an intentional life is better when we do it together. Until next time, remember, the life you want doesn't happen by chance, it happens by choice. Let's keep creating it one step at a time.